Hello everyone, I'm Becky Goldsmith with Piece of Cake, and I want to show you how to both end and begin a line of stitching when you are doing hand quilting. Now, I'm doing big stitch hand quilting with a number 16 pearl cotton. You might be using a number 12 or a number 8. You can use any number of things. Shoot, you could even be using regular hand quilting thread. The process is the same. So let's pretend that I'm about to run out of thread. If I was really short on thread here, what I would do is put a simple knot in my thread, 1/4 of an inch to 3/8 of an inch away from the end of the thread. So you don't want to be too short on your thread here. And what I can do is either check my spacing and put my needle in just a little bit behind where my thread has come out of the quilt. Let me pull this forward so you can see it better. So I would either put my needle in here and run it just through the sandwich of the quilt, or if the spacing looked right, I would go a stitch in front. I don't honestly think it makes that much difference. I'm going to go behind. Now, if I put my needle in and pull it that way, the knot will pull more in line with the needle and the thread, if that makes sense. If I take the knot and pull it this way, sometimes it doesn't pull as well. It doesn't pop through the top fabric as well. I'm going to take this backwards just a bit. I'm going to go that way. You get a feel for this. There's not one direction or another that's more right or more wrong. It's just that I know with this quilt, that's likely to pop through in this direction a little better. Now I'm going to grab the thread, and sometimes, yeah, that one, it just pulled right through. Sometimes the knot, it makes me have to like hold and support this fabric to pull it. Sometimes the knots catch the fabric more and are harder to pull through. And in my last video, I didn't get to this part, but let me say that these little curved perfect scissors are the only scissors I would use for clipping threads near the surface of the quilt, because they do turn up just a bit. You're less likely to catch the fabric. All right, so there I've ended off. Now, let's again pretend that I had to thread up once more. The quilting knot that I use for hand applique is very similar to this. With a finer thread, you would put more wraps around the needle to make a bigger knot. But this is pretty thick thread all on its own. So I'm going to point the tail of thread up. I'm putting the thread behind the needle. I'm going to wrap the thread around the needle one time to make one loop around the needle. Be sure that you have fully covered that loop of thread. If all it does is just barely touch the end of your fingertips, your knot will fall apart. Do this, hold that loop in place on the thread, and there you go. And I've probably got a 1/2 inch tail of thread, and I'm going to leave it alone. All right, so here, what I want to do is begin my next quilting stitch at the far end of that stitch that I made that includes the knot, because this stitch did not actually catch any of the underneath fabric. So this time I'm going to move away from where I want the needle to come up, which is going to be right about there at the beginning of that last stitch. Now, I'm going to pull the thread here, and that's going to bury the knot and the tail of the thread sort of in line with where I'm going to put my stitches. But I don't want to be so close that when I'm doing my hand quilting, I'm going to stitch over that knot, because if you catch the knot with your needle, sometimes it gets hung up and it wants to pull through. It's not a good thing. So I'm going to move my needle off just a little bit more, and I'm going to pull this through, and again I'm going to grab the thread and pop that knot down. Now I don't want the knot to be right up next to the top of the fabric. And see, I've got a little more tail of thread there. So I'm going to reach in with my needle and swish that down. And then I'm going to begin again quilting over the stitch that includes the knot. Just like that. Boom. And so here you'll have, a doubled stitch. But I haven't noticed that that's a problem. It may be in very, very fine hand quilting. You might not like that look, but I actually like the idea that these two stitches that have a knot and a tail of thread are held very securely in place. And that's how you do it. That's how you end a line of stitching. That's how you begin the next line of stitching. I hope you enjoyed this demo. I hope you're really enjoying your hand quilting, and I hope you have many happy stitches. Thanks for watching.